Hello. Hello. Hi. Hello. Hi. It's on. The mic is on. We're live. You're live at the Sales Enablement Breakout. And this is not where we're going to train you how to do sales, just to be super clear. I realize the title is slightly confusing. And if it were me, I would be like, no, I'm good. But we're not going to do that. We're going to talk a lot about AI in sales and sales activation, sales enablement. So come on in. Come forward if you like. We know we're in the main room, but it's not that full right now. So maybe come forward, make us feel like we're part of your world. Super. Come on in. Just let everybody kind of settle in. We've got an epic amount of water bottles up here. So if anybody is parched, let us know. We can do a water bottle cannon throughout as needed. Yeah, Craig's on it. Very good. That's proper sales enablement there, right? Like t-shirt cannon. Fab. Great. Thanks, guys, for coming. I'm Zoe. I'm happy to be your moderator today. I'm Chief Commercial Officer at Peak. Peak is an intelligent application development platform. What do you know? That works out. So I'm very happy to be here. I'm a big fan of intelligent applications. I've been in the AI space for about a decade now. I've worked in NLP, computer vision, NLU, chatbots, time series, forecasting, sales stuff. I've sold stuff. I've built stuff. And now I get to help other builders build stuff on our platform, which is super cool. But today, my primary role and responsibility is to facilitate a chat amongst these three fabulous gentlemen about how AI is getting used inside of intelligent applications around sales. I find myself to be a qualified moderator on this topic, not only because I've gotten to do a lot of stuff in AI over the years. I've worked on a bunch of these use cases. I know where they are like both really fun and punchy and also where they totally go off the rails. But also specifically because most of these software products are aimed at selling to people like me. And fun fact, I have been actively sold all of these products at some point, which is super fun for me, because now I get to have these great guys here to tell you about how they're built, what's cool about the tech under the hood, which frankly, no insult to anyone, this would also be true for most companies. The SDRs that call me up don't always give me all those details. So we get to get into like the nitty gritty with these guys today, learn a little bit about what's happening on the AI inside of those applications, and also what the adoption is like around intelligent applications for sales. So I'm going to start with letting you guys quickly introduce yourself. So Craig, do you want to start? I'm going to sit now. I just had to get you all your attention. Go ahead, Craig.
Great. Hey, everyone. Really nice to meet you. Look forward to the discussion today. So Craig Hanson, I'm Senior Director of Market Strategy at Gong, leading the market strategy team. So we do a lot of work directly with customers, the market, and then the broader ecosystem. So great to chat with all of you today. Prasad, over to you.
I'm Prasad Raje. I'm Chief Product Officer at Outreach, helping to build a better mousetrap.
Better mousetrap.
I'm Kyle Coleman. I'm the SVP of Marketing at Clari, and we'll talk way more about what Clari does in a moment. Pleasure to be here.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, so to start, I want to start with like a question I've asked you each individually, but I think would be great to bring out here, which is, something I find really interesting about this concept of intelligent applications is there's sort of like two heritage journeys that a lot of these intelligent apps have come from. One is somebody found something cool with AI and was like, you can do something with this. Let me make a product around it. I've done a lot of that. The other is like, there was already a product that was doing something that was useful, and then someone was like, we could AI that, and it would be better. Both are totally valid directions, but I'm curious from your heritage, like how did it come to pass? Did it start as the heart of the beast, or was the application first and the intelligence was layered in, and artificial intelligence in particular gained traction over time over things, or in addition to things like analytics that might have already been there? So Prasad, I'm going to start with you.
So most of you know Outreach as sales enablement. That's been our history. And to answer the first part of the question, it's the second model, which is the product. I don't know the first. Anyway, the product existed, the need existed. Obviously, sales enablement was a thing, and we sort of invented that space. But we came to the point where, at scale, when you have large amounts of responses from prospects, et cetera, there's a need to extract intelligently sentiment, extract things like job titles, extract things like associated prospects. So things around the unstructured conversations that are happening between seller and buyer naturally, led to a large amount of data in our four walls, and there was a natural evolution that said, okay, we can actually add value by applying AI to the data we have. So that was the first part. Although the company since evolved to be a platform company, and in that scenario, it's a little bit more nuanced because we sort of realized that we were sitting on a lot of data that could help predict outcomes of opportunities in a way that brought AI to a completely different predictive area. So to predict the outcomes of opportunities, and then also to conversations as well. So it's a live AI in conversation. That was a place where we said it was almost sort of co-created. Wouldn't it be cool if, in fact, there was a live assistant for every seller in every meeting that was helping them live during a sales meeting? So anyway, I hope that answered the question. So a little bit of both, depending on which part of the product we're talking about.
Yeah, Kyle, you have told me that you yourself are not wildly technical, but I'll still force you to answer the question.
Destroy my credibility. Tee me up for the question.
There you
Beautiful.
go. Yeah. Live in front of a studio audience.
Yeah, perfect. Love it. Very similar to Prasad, where Clari is about 10 years old, and the lineage of Clari was sort of solving this problem in two different steps. And step one of the problem was a lack of data. I don't know how many of you have had the misfortune of working with a CRM, working with something like Salesforce, but it is not a system that most salespeople enjoy using. And as a result, the data that used to have to get manually entered into that CRM just didn't happen. And so the data was always incomplete. And so Clari, the initial goal of Clari was to help augment that data, help create some sort of systems and some automation to capture data into a system of record, into a database that could then inform ML and AI type modeling. And that's where we are now. You kind of fast forward 10 years later, and we've had this aha moment that says, now that we have all of this data, not just the data that's in your CRM, but data that's in your sales team's calendars and their email clients and all the affiliated apps that they're using, we aggregate all that data in a platform sort of way that Prasad mentioned, and we realize what we are helping companies answer the hardest question in business, which is, are we going to meet, beat, or miss on revenue? It's the number one question that's top of mind for every executive team, every board of directors, and we realize that that's what our AI can do. At the individual rep level, as Prasad said, predicting outcomes at the individual level, but then aggregating all of that up to the company level and making the sorts of predictions that move markets. And it's a big responsibility. It's something we take very seriously, but that's been the evolution that we've gone down.
And at Gong, my sense is that it wasn't quite that. It started with NLP, or actually with speech to text.
Yeah, I say Gong really started from the customer problem perspective.
Yeah.
So our CEO and co-founder Amit was running a B2B company, and he tells the story of how sales were going well, things were progressing, and then one quarter, sales were not going well, and things started to get harder. And so he starts trying to find out why. What's going on, what's happening, and what do I do about it? Where do you find that information? You go into the CRM, there's a little bit there, right? But it's chronically sparse, it's kind of outdated. What's entered in there are opinions entered by reps. You talk to the reps, like there's that filter. And so you're not getting a picture of reality. So it's this direct customer problem of, how do I really know what's going on? Well, the richness of that information was actually in the interactions that those reps were having with the prospects and customers. That's where you could really learn how the prospects and customers were reacting, what they were saying, how things were going. And so it was really born out of that need to say, okay, well, can we understand what's going on there? So that initial genesis of Gong was around the conversations. Let's understand what's happening there. And all of a sudden, that just lit up the room and gave a lot of visibility into exactly what was happening with the deals, but also what's happening with those people and their progression and performance and skill up leveling. So it kind of unlocked a lot of that. The way to get access to that and turn it into something that you could use at scale was AI. And so developed very sophisticated technology paired up with our co-founder and chief product officer, Elon, who built this and founded the company around that idea. So it was there from the inception. It was always a hardcore aspect of it, but it was there specifically because that's what was needed to address that customer problem.
Yeah, fair enough. Okay, cool. So as somebody who's worked in this space for a while, one of my niggles, one of the things that like gets me, like really rubs me a little bit is AI marketing is like an overall theme. I'm not calling you out specifically. I also run our marketing team, so like this isn't a dig specifically on Kyle. But let's maybe explore that. No, I'm just kidding.
So let's dig.
But let's go for it. One of the things I find really challenging about AI marketing overall is that it isn't very technical, like in mass. And so if you are even lightly technical or medium technical and you want to understand like actually how something works, it's very hard to do on a lot of AI applications. Like it's hard to learn what's under the hood. What is the thing that is actually interesting about this? And there's a lot of like better results, faster this, like la la la, like which is cool. Outcomes are cool and I'm into it. But this is a pretty technical crowd. I'm interested if you can give a little bit, not the full, we don't need to go through the whole tech stack, we don't have slides or whatever. But like really what are the AI techniques under the hood of the product that are particularly compelling, where you feel like the product is doing something really differentiated? Like basic speech to text, no offense, but like it's been around.
Oh, yeah.
So like what is it that is interesting within the product today from in your perspective, under the hood that's happening that's like compelling, creating those compelling outcomes, but in a way that's different than what was around maybe 4 or 5 years ago? Prasad, as a product guy on the stage, I guess I'll start again with you because I don't want to put Kyle under the gun straight away. It's not kind.
So I'll give 2 examples. So in the sort of the speech to text thing, we took the approach of having the thesis that doing this live is actually important. And instead of training our models on general conversation, we actually trained it on sales specific conversation.
Okay.
And we fed it with the ability to capture intent that is sales specific, specific to whether the person's talking about competition, whether the buyer's talking about pricing, they're talking about integration of your product or other things. So these are not constructs that are in your foundational models. And so that's one thing we did, and we did it live, to the rep. And in a way that was also contextual to the customer. So if one of our customers is a company called Seaboard, and if you look at the word Seaboard uttered in normal conversations, it's SEABORD, but we actually train our models to have a custom ontology for that customer. So that becomes not only sales specific but customer specific, and that actually results in something meaningful and useful and relevance. And sort of, from there, satisfaction goes up and all the other soft stuff happens. But at the core, those are the 2 things we decided to do differently on the live conversation side, on the conversation side.
In the early days of launching AWS's Amazon Transcribe beta, it was in beta, and we tested AWS and it came back as 8 of us very regularly. John's nodding because he knows he was there. It was just like so frustrating because we were using it on we were testing it on ourselves. We're like, man, damn, that sucks. So getting that ontology right really matters. All right, Kyle.
The same sort of magic that Prasad mentioned, being very specific about what the next best actions are for salespeople to take. What are the risk or momentum indicators that exist, again, bespoke to the model that we've built for the specific customer. So that all of that is happening. But I think maybe more foundational or maybe from a more fundamental level, the insight that Clari had, and this is true, I think, for many other applications or ancillary applications in the AI space, is that the system that we are keying off of, Salesforce in particular, the CRM I mentioned earlier, was not purpose-built for this kind of modeling. The data that's captured and stored in Salesforce is sporadic and at best, and therefore is not very reliable to build a model off of. And so part of the secret sauce or the magic of Clari is the fact that we are snapshotting every one of our customers' Salesforce instance every 15 minutes and storing that data in our own time series data hub in order to build those models off of. And so there's a sort of an interesting thing that had to happen to understand that that data needed to be cataloged somewhere
Yep.
in order to create a reliable enough data set to build a meaningful model so that we could then pull in all of the other data that exists in the ways that Prasad mentioned, the live conversations that you're having, the other apps that your team is using, whatever it may be. But just having that extra data layer
Yep.
was a critical step for us. And I think companies that came before us and just tried to use Salesforce directly, they failed. Because that data just doesn't have high enough fidelity in order to be trustworthy to do anything else against. So maybe not the most,
No, but that works. I've done that. That does work.
Say
But it's
again.
like a viable technical solution to the problem.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah.
All right.
I think for us, Gong is continued to expand along a couple of vectors. One is just continuing to encompass more and more of those interactions and those data signals. So you're really getting a full holistic picture of everything's going on. You're also increasing and deepening the accuracy of what's going on so it can become more of a trusted source of data. Then it allows you to really produce genuine insights and action items that people will trust for how they should be managing or up-leveling their people or better executing their deals, or you can start doing anything. And then the other vector we've operated on is as you continue to master and deepen that AI accuracy, depth, and breadth, you can start applying it to all kinds of interesting areas, which have reinforcing effects. So helping you manage and up-level your team, helping you execute on deals, being able to forecast, being able to work with rep productivity. Kind of the possibilities there are pretty expansive and endless, and they all reinforce each other. And I think after a certain point of that AI depth and breadth, that's where you start to see a lot of the exponential value, when people are really getting that multiplier effect across different applications and use cases.
Yep, yep. All right, so last one on this like sort of technical under the hood bit. This is a quick fire question. I don't know if anybody's seen Top Chef, but that means go really fast. So I think a lot about kind of AI in these different like domains or subdomains. I'm not going to get into generative here just for like the sake of the fact that I don't think it's being heavily used in any of your products. Generally speaking, in these use cases, my experience has been it's heavily language-based models, so sort of NLP, NLU, speech-to-text, text-to-speech, some translation stuff, like whatever, some text analytics, and time series data, where you're doing kind of deal prediction and those kinds of things. We'll call it, for the sake of argument, like some structured and unstructured, but I'm really talking about time series and language models, which I think are the most dominant in this space. At your various, because, okay, clearly they compete, right? Like every question I'm asking, they're all like, yeah, we do that, yeah. So you guys all compete, like I get that, that's cool. How evenly weighted is the science within your universe? Is it 80, 90% language and a little sprinkle of time series? Is it mainly time series, or is it super evenly balanced? Which means that you're dodging the question probably, but I'm not saying that's for sure. But all right, I'm going to start with you, Craig, because I keep starting with Prasad, so we'll go backwards.
Yeah, so for us, the core started with the conversations as the first thing we tackled, but by this point, it's encompassed all types of those interactions. So it's
All
looking at
types of
different-
those interactions.
Well,
so,
both of your categories that you're
okay,
mentioning.
but you guys aren't using CV. Are you using computer vision at all, or is that?
We're looking. I don't know how much we've talked about
Okay,
and
fine.
disclosed
All right,
specifically.
We're getting roadmap disclosures live on stage. That's good.
Exactly.
Okay, Prasad?
Similar, I would say. It depends on the product. So, our engagement product would be a lot more event and activity driven. Our opportunity prediction score is a lot more time series.
Yeah.
Driven. Obviously, the live content cards I talked about is very much
Language.
Natural language stuff. And so it's really a mix. I wouldn't say it's really, we have half a dozen models,
Yeah.
at least in our stack. And so to sort of pin down which one's the dominant one is sort of hard, actually,
Yeah.
truthfully hard.
All right.
So.
Well managed. Kyle?
Very similar to what these guys talked
Okay.
about before. It's a combination. I would say the fundamental product that Clari is offering is helping companies forecast on revenue outcomes. So it's very much, most of that is reliant on the time series data
Very
that
time
we're
series.
collecting.
Yeah.
But there are obviously use cases for individual reps or for managers that are more based on language processing and things like that. So probably 80-20
Yeah.
time series and then NLP.
Was I correct that no one's using generative, or at least not that you're willing to disclose?
Not that we're willing.
Now that
Yeah,
we're willing to disclose.
okay. I was going for some juicy questions. All right, I'm going to move on to a question I know we'll get a little juicier with. which is the other thing that I struggle with in AI marketing in general, is that it's, I think, there's a lot out there that buyers struggle to understand about artificial intelligence, even the concept that there are these multiple domains. Oh, this is some NLP, and this is some time series, and by the way, you need this much data to get a time series to work correctly, and la, la, la. We can't fix it all, but I'm curious, we've got a nicely educated group of folks here that are all curious. If you could fix one misconception from buyers or the market on this specific area, so kind of AI-powered sales tooling and sales applications, what would be the one misconception or falsehood or misinformation campaign that you find you stumble up against in a conversation and you're like, that question doesn't even really make sense?
Yeah.
Kyle, you're looking really eager, so we'll start with you. You're like, yeah, I have so many of those.
Well, so AI for sales is relatively new. I mean, the three of our companies are pioneering the space in many ways. And I think one of the misconceptions that exists, not so much from a marketing standpoint, but for the users of our product, a misconception that exists is that if the AI is wrong once, it's wrong all the time. Which is to say, salespeople in particular, one strike and you're out in many times. And that is very risky for companies like ours that are trying to say, we're not going to be completely prescriptive about what a salesperson needs to do in order to move a deal forward. But what we're trying to give, what the AI is trying to give, is a signal for them to consider based on this model that we have, based on all the insights we have aggregated across this enormous data set for what they could potentially do next, and then use that signal however they see fit. And so a long way of saying, what we're trying to do at Clari is we're trying to find the right balance between the art of sales, that is a human-to-human interaction, more often than not, especially B2B sales, and the science that the AI and ML allows for. Yeah. And if a salesperson, if an individual loses trust in the model, it's very, very hard to regain that.
Yeah, somebody's going to have a good question on trust, which I'm just going to let the crowd ask because that's a really juicy one. But Prasad?
I think the question we get, less so now, but we still get, which is, why can't CRM do that? And so we sort of, I'm sure we all give the same answer to that question, which is, hey, CRM is your grandfather's database.
Yeah.
It's where stuff goes to live and die. It's the system of record. It's where ERP. It's like the old ERP systems. And the truth is, Salesforce doesn't have any provenance over the unstructured way in which sales actually happens. That's right. Sales doesn't happen in a CRM. Sales is reported if you are running a tight ship in your as a CRO. If you're running a really tight ship, then it's reported there. But it doesn't actually happen there. So the reason we all exist, really, this whole space exists, is because there's a whole separate domain of unstructured, offline conversation, which thankfully has increasingly gone online, that we can all sort of tap into and say, this is the unstructured conversation between emails and meetings and phone calls, and in fact live meetings also, for that matter, video capture, everything that doesn't actually live in the sales system, but actually is the act of selling. And that's the stuff that feeds us, right? And so once we explain it that way, that question just goes away, and actually it's going away increasingly now. So
yeah, I mean, this question that was asked in the session before, are we going to run out of data? I think you guys would probably all say, not anytime soon for your use cases. The idea of capturing every moment of sales magic somehow in a form of data that would allow us to understand it, replicate it, analyze it is still at its earlier stages, still early days. Greg, what's your misconception?
Yeah. I think the biggest thing that I see and that I would correct would be just a more limited view or unimagined view of really what the technology can do today. So they may think originally, all right, these are solutions useful for capturing and maybe recording calls or looking at the emails, and then you can do keyword searches or you can get the transcripts. Okay, that's great, it's useful. That's where we were 5, 6, 7 years ago. It's so much bigger and broader now. And so really just kind of shaking people up to a much more expansive view of, wow, once you actually have this level of understanding and this breadth of capability, you can do amazing things for your people and your deals and your strategic priorities. And so you're just kind of opening them up to that full possibility. That's kind of the biggest difference that we could be opening up for people.
Yeah, I find that to be very common. Like stuff that was really hard 5 years ago or 10 years, particularly 10 years ago, that now is actually pretty solved. Or like where there's so many new ways you could apply it. You just want to be like, no, I know you tried this as a pilot in 2012. Like I remember that chat, but like the technology is really different now. You know, building a recommender is much faster now than it was 5 years ago, 10 years ago.
Exactly. Or they're saying, oh yeah, call recording. And you're like, no, you're missing it. That's not the potential. Like that's not going to get you what you need. Or what Prasad was talking about, like the CRM. Like, no, not even close. So I'm sure we all answer that same question. We all get back. Probably has different punchlines for each of the three of us. The punchline is either Clari, Outreach, or Gong. But the same response. Or it's just the last little bit that's tweaked differently.
That's right.
Okay, well, we've got 15 minutes left, so I want to give a chance for anybody. I have more questions. I could ask these guys questions all day. But if anybody in the audience has a question, we got one hand up.
Okay, so you've built intelligent apps. My question is around how do you make decisions on deploying new models? When do you sort of deprecate a model? You've mentioned many models are at play. Some are, and the second part of that question is, my understanding from the discussion so far is that most customers get an individualized model, or even more fine-grained than that. So how do you think about the model operations, especially for an audience full of people that want to build intelligent applications?
Great question. Love that question.
That sounds like a Prasad
question.
Given
Prasad,
all
would you like to answer?
So, I mean, for example, I'll give you to your first question. We used to have sentiment as, email sentiment models. That was sort of many years ago. But we have now, evolved to the point of like, that was sentiment on the aggregate, on the entire email. It was like, is the email positive or negative, and, et cetera. Mm-hmm. But now it's much more granular than that, right? To say, moment by moment in every meeting, did a person with a title of legal say something negative about legal? Did a person who has a title that is associated with finance say something negative or positive about budget? Right? So it's a lot more granular now and sort of fine-grained than it used to be. So in that sense, we retired the old stuff in favor of the more fine-grained stuff. What was your second question?
The configurability, basically.
The configurability,
like how configurable versus... Are you guys building new models for every single customer you go to? Are you tuning? How configurable is it? I think that's like a... Yeah,
that's a good question. So obviously, we want to take advantage of our data set, and we have to train our models in the aggregate across all our customers, which we do, right? Because, and we have some of the largest volume of being sort of the first-party creator of, sequences and generating being first-party of emails and naturally task flows. And we've added stuff like success plans in our system, which people actually run their deals with. So there's a lot of first-party information that we obviously leverage our own large volume of data for. But what we then proceed to do is, from there we sort of cull down so for example, in this opportunity deal health score that we have, we started with the thesis of about 30 different parameters that could be important for us. We cull those down to 14 based on the large data set. And then we decide weightage on a subset of that based on not only customer, but for a given customer, opportunity type, as well as opportunity stage, because we believe that the amount of activity associated with an opportunity is actually perfectly normal to have lots of activity at the late stage, but actually that may actually not be very good enough because you actually need a lot more than a lot. That would be greater than an earlier stage. You know what I mean? So anyway, so it's quite tuned to those types of nuances. I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, I think this concept around configurability is like actually sort of the next big thing in AI-driven apps, is my opinion. I'm just authoring it because I spend a lot of time working with companies building them. And what we think about it at Peak is that you can basically build them in a modular way. that allows you to retain 80% of the same basic code base or model base, and then build out configurability on top of it. So, but that is quite a new framework, actually, right? I mean, it's been growing over the years. Other questions? Yes? A near neighbor. This is a questioning table, curious table.
It's contagious.
Okay, I love it.
Kyle, you talked earlier about the art of sales, right? And my dad is, been a salesman for decades. But what I'm curious about with all of you is how much of your data is structured data versus unstructured data, and where do you see that going?
There you go.
Very similar, Zoe, to the question you asked before. The majority, well, we have different models that are making different predictions for different workflows, basically. For the workflows that are more forecasting oriented, that are more quantitative, they are reliant more on the structured data that we're getting out of the CRM, out of Salesforce. That's augmented by unstructured data that we're pulling from various sources, the live conversations, the internal meetings, those sorts of things. But I think that the majority of our models are built around structured data with a little smattering of unstructured data built in. And part of the reason for that is because our reliance on unstructured data has been increasing over the last, call it 18 to 24 months. And so to the earlier question, our models are having to be updated to accommodate the new data flows that we have, the new inputs that we have in the model. So I expect that proportion to change in the coming years. But right now, I'd say it's probably about 80% structured, 20% unstructured.
Ah, see, you got an answer out of him. I tried that question. I didn't get a percentage breakdown. Got to get it from the audience.
That's right.
Love
Imagine
that.
the next person who asks.
We're going to get the whole roadmap. I love it.
So, but I would differ from that. So
Okay, all right.
I would bias towards unstructured more than structured.
Right.
In our case, the deal health score I talked about is almost all unstructured.
Unstructured,
because
right.
that's sort of. Otherwise, you can always tell tell the rep to tell you what they think the probability of a deal score is, of a deal closing is, and you do, and you're not going to take that away. But we want to provide a mechanism that has sort of a data-driven answer to that, insight into that question for the sales manager to have an independent sort of viewpoint on it. So, and on our forecasting side, which we also do, yes, we do rely on the time series,
yeah.
the time series snapshots and all that good stuff. But actually, the real magic is when the two of them are put together.
Together, yeah.
Right? So, and this is still, to be perfectly honest, this is still cooking. It's sort of, it's
a lot of that, the joining up of these technologies, getting them to finally sync together is like, I think, the moment we're in,
yes.
which is cool. I'm here for it, been here for it for a while, but it's like cool to actually see it finally happening.
Yeah, for example, right? I mean, you can say, look, based on the time series of the last year, I can predict for every opportunity at this stage of this size, this is the cohort win rate from here to close. But that leaves out what happened like last week in terms of the fact that it went dead.
Right.
In actual interactions. And so how can you ignore that signal?
It also leaves out the macroeconomic changes. If your model
Right.
is based on the market from a year ago, you're
Right.
going to get completely untrustworthy, inaccurate predictions about what's going to happen tomorrow. And so to the model updating and taking in new data and pulling in the unstructured data is critical to have something that you can actually rely on.
At the end of the day, these tools are tools, right? Like all AI technologies, they're tools. They're not magic bullets. They don't magically create revenue. You just brought macroeconomic climate, so I just can't help myself. Like you can't magically change the macroeconomic climate, for example. And sales leaders everywhere are looking at hard decisions right now, I think, right? Like that macroeconomic, I mean, it's a moment. As I was driving in, another rate hike. So how do you see the limit of the tooling? Like, where do you see it stops? Where is it still, you've got a sales leader that needs to make a good call or a CEO that's got to make a tough call? And like, I understand the tooling will, better information, we're all data people here. Like, that's going to make it easier. But there's definitely still space. I guess I'll just confirm. You guys all agree there's still spaces that AI is not a magic bullet for and doesn't magically create sales for you, that there's a limit to that. Or do you believe we're in generative sales creative mode yet?
There's still that human element, but I still feel like we're early on the curve in the actual adoption and utilization of even what's capable today.
Like in
So
5 years, what I'm saying might not be totally crazy bananas.
I mean, there's the data side, which is the first thing we could all start doing is we provide some of that visibility. Like we were saying earlier, it didn't exist in the CRM, didn't otherwise. So we start turning on the lights, giving that visibility. But then there's so much more you can arc beyond that to actually pull insights out of all that data.
Yeah.
Because people aren't buying a solution just to get data thrown at them.
Yeah.
They actually want the insights, and then you move into the actions. How do I actually change the outcome? How do I improve things? And so there's so much more that you can use in the use cases, even beyond, or even utilizing what's available today in the AI.
So you guys all use your own tools to sell your shit, yeah?
We do.
Yeah?
Yeah, okay, just
Very
confirming.
much.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm curious, because I have been sold all your stuff, as mentioned. But like, your internal teams use it. I assume they give you feedback on it, and then you
Indeed.
have your customers that give feedback on it. I mean, like Kyle, you are a user of your own product as the SVP of marketing. I would assume you're
Heavily.
using Clari every day. When you go to the poor product team and tell them your feedback, how does that get weighed against somebody from here that's using Clari?
I think equally.
Yeah.
I'm really, it's hard to say. What we do from a product roadmap or product prioritization standpoint is we don't listen to the loudest voice in the room. We listen to the aggregated feedback and try and make the decisions that are going to move the needle for the most people at the same time. So I don't think that my voice is necessarily louder than any of our customers' voices. We try and do the things that are going to be most impactful for as many people as possible. And to go back to the earlier question, because I think Craig hit it nicely, if I can, is that okay, Zoe?
Yeah, I mean, we're on borrowed time. No, we've got 4 more minutes.
Okay, cool.
One more question.
Your question about how is this data being used? For us, we view it as a triangulation point, which is to say the call that the machine is making, the forecast call that the machine is making, is one critical data point in a kind of three-point triangle. So 1 point is the machine call, 1 point is the top-down leadership call, and 1 point is the bottoms-up kind of rep roll-up call.
Yeah.
And it's up to the leader to kind of wade through those different data points and determine what's the most accurate here. Because the human, has some sort of ability still in this moment that's going to be better and more accurate than the machine. It's similar, we were talking about this earlier, there was a moment in time in the development of AI for chess where the machine was not beating the
You're
human
just
at the
picking
time.
all the controversial topics up here. AI for chess.
Well-
I won't, but
Well, there was a time where the man plus machine was beating the machine.
yeah.
And that is the moment that we're in right now that we see across our customer base for sales, where the human plus the machine is more accurate than either of them independently.
It's like an interesting thing because I think learning how to work with an ML model is not actually like the most intuitive experience for a lot of people, particularly not technical people. And in my experience, salespeople are not the most technical people. There are exceptions. So it's interesting as sales managers now and business leaders, there's like a new requirement for learning how to engage with an ML model that I think is so different. It's like, oh, this is probabilistic. Oh, it relies on data sets. Oh, I have to know how to ask it questions, ask questions of the data or understand what the prediction even means or that there's a probability range. It's like a totally different skill set for a sales manager than being like, hey, let's get on the pipeline call. Like, what's your status? You know, like it's a different thing. Totally different skill set.
Absolutely, and it's part of the reason why disabling or disallowing some sort of AI black box is super important.
Yeah.
And we all have these
Yeah.
capabilities in our product, but you need to expose the insight to the business user, but also tell them why in simple terms. This deal got downgraded because you don't have the CFO engaged. And the model knows that if you don't have the CFO engaged in an early stage deal, it's probably not going to close. And so giving some sort of insight like that at a high level for a business user, translating the model to some simple terms is extremely important.
Yeah, I'm big on the canceling of the black box. Yes, last question, eager hand. This table.
Same
There
table.
was another question over here, which technically went up earlier, but go ahead.
Well, thank you for the great panel discussion. I have a question on data quality. Also, I feel compelled to ask because Zoe said this is a
Data
question
quality,
table.
yeah.
So my question is, For the quality of AI output to be good, it largely depends on the input data, the quality being good. So have you built or will you build your own tooling to provide the diagnostics when something is not good in the outcome? Is it due to the customer's data or your own AI algorithm and model? Thanks.
Yeah, good question. I mean, you guys built the cataloging of the Salesforce. I mean, you guys are all partners with Salesforce, I assume. I didn't do my due diligence on this, but yep, you're all ecosystem partners. Yeah, everybody's just up here just trashing Salesforce. But go ahead.
Yes, we have our own tooling to automate the capture of various structured and unstructured data, both to get it into the CRM database as well as to pull it out of in a time series way, pull it out of the database and catalog it to build the model off of. So all of that is happening, but we also partner with other enrichment type programs that can help augment some of the missing data. So I believe it's critical that we have a full data set before we go and build the model, and our product has both of the steps that companies need in order to implement our front-end solution. The data capture, the data quality sort of assurance product, and then the actual front-end product that's making the predictions.
Yeah, I worry less about that than completeness. So I think the issue is that we can't predict what we can't see, right? So the issue is, are we actually capturing every moment of every sales cycle? Because if stuff is happening that we can't see, then the best models in the world are not going to be any good. So my bigger concern is completeness.
Anything to add, Craig?
Yeah. No, I think it's the completeness, but I think what companies are able to, and what Gong's focused on, and just increasing that level of accuracy to the point where it is expert level and you get the humans to be able to trust and rely on it. I think that's essential. When you start moving beyond data and indications of data that you give to people, if you're actually making recommendations, suggestions, giving action items, then you have to be correct. So you just continually arc up that level of accuracy. And I think we've reached a point in our applications where we get that trust and that level of respect. We can show them, we can tie it directly to the data. You can see exactly what's influencing that. Here's the aspects of the calls, the emails, all the interactions, exactly where it came from. So it's an open and transparent system. But that level of accuracy is there. And once they start to see that, then you really see teams be able to operationalize and streamline it. If they feel like they have to second guess things, it's just going to be a slow and halting experience. But I think we've, at least in our customer base and those experiences, reached that tipping point where they can accept that, and then you just start unlocking all of that application value, like I mentioned.
Yeah, it gets better. I think one of the weirdest things about selling AI, this is early days, I'm aging myself, but like 8 years ago, I'd sit down with an exec team and I'd be like, okay, so the first day of the product will be your worst day of the product. And a lot of companies were used to, buying a machine that the first day of the product was the best day of the product. And so they'd go use this thing, they'd be so frustrated. Now, a lot of the products that are out there, applications like what you guys have built, you've done a lot of the legwork on behalf of customers, so they're getting to value much, much faster. Even if the product is its worst on the first day, it's still pretty damn good. So well done, all of you. Thanks for joining for the panel. Thanks to all of you guys for the good questions. And there's a break now for 15 minutes before the keynote back here. So thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Okay.